We're going to wait 2 more minutes, folks, as we believe we have some commissioners that are just stuck in traffic. We'll get here soon. If you're here, folks, while we have a delay and you haven't had a chance to sign in the back, sign in. We'll pass that clipboard around as we get started. All right, Miss Amy, give me the signal when we're ready to go live, and we will. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this City of Newberry Commission workshop of September 16th. Before we get started, we do want to notice the absence of Commissioner Farnsworth and Martin. Commissioner Martin, we believe, will be here shortly, but we're not going to wait up too much longer for him. And with that, I'll have a motion to approve the agenda as it has been advertised. I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda as it has been advertised? Any public comment on the agenda as it has been advertised? And this is the agenda. Are we out of the ones back there? The agenda is call to order, approval of the agenda, invocation, pledge of allegiance, and then we have one agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2020 budget, and then we will adjourn. So just in case that you didn't get a chance to see that. And our preacher was not able to make it, so I'm looking at Pastor Rocky and seeing if he might be willing to give us a preview of his prayer that he's going to give us next Monday night here as well tonight. If you would come to the podium, sir, and if you would please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Pastor Rocky, we appreciate your pitch hitting for us here.
Father, I thank you for this community. I thank you for the citizens that are here and the commission and the mayor and all the city employees. Lord, I just ask that you would just guide their hearts tonight, lead them, and lead this community. Lord, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Rocky of Destiny Community Church. We appreciate you, sir. All right, and we will get right into our one agenda item. Mr. Manager, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, this is our fifth and potentially final budget workshop, since we are intending to finalize our budget next Monday night. The window's getting short to have additional workshops. Commission asked us to look on, or I guess to suspend discussions, do a little research, and come back and finalize a couple of items that we were working on our last meeting. And we are prepared to do that. Look at you. So we have discussed a continuation budget using a millage rate of 5.99 which was the millage rate that we utilized for the current fiscal year. Earlier on in the year, the commission had set a cap rate of 6.3 mils, and so some projects came up late in the budget season that there was some discussion about whether how those would be funded. What we approved in the tentative budget at our Monday night meeting on September the 9th was to adopt the 5.99 rate, and that's what we're prepared to do. In the meantime, since our last workshop, the County Property Appraiser's Office contacted us and indicated that they had adjusted our proposed taxable property values, and that adjustment they anticipate will result in $140,000 in additional revenues. Due to state laws related to trim noticing, we are not allowed to budget for that $140,000. Matter of fact, it's not guaranteed. They'll do a final in October sometime. But given the confidence that we have that we'll see those revenues, what staff is prepared to do is complete the budget at a 5.99 rate, all of the 5.999 rate, all of the projects that we were discussing and that we were kind of struggling with at our last workshop total significantly less than $140,000. Staff proposes that we approve the budget as proposed, and that we prioritize, the commission prioritize those additional projects that they're interested in seeing. As soon as we get in October and we have confirmation that we're going to have those revenues, we can make a budget adjustment, include those projects. There would be leftover revenues at that point that the commission would have discretion on how they'd like to see spent, or they could earmark it for some of the future projects that the commission has been anticipating, and I think they're coming up on this slide. We've discussed the need for additional road paving, some downtown enhancement projects, specifically one along Seaboard Coastline Drive. We know that in the next 5 to 10 years we're going to do an expansion on City Hall and may want to begin planning for that. We lost some funding, or some of the approved projects in wild spaces were not funded. When the Canterbury opportunity presented itself, there'd be some consideration on whether the commission might want to move some of those dollars into recreation or any other economic development. So that's kind of our ongoing list of the things that the commission has asked us to keep our eye on, that we're developing a savings account for, so that we can handle those projects when they come up in the future. So, but right now, staff's recommendation is 5.999. All the projects that we discussed at our last workshop, we believe would get funded, with the exception of acquiring land for a future police station.
But my staff believes that we can spend this upcoming year studying the question of where we would optimally like the police station to go. Perhaps have an agenda item sometime in the next 6 months where we can talk about the two-way pairs, we can talk about the railroad, we can talk about pros and cons of consolidating first responders in one area versus spreading them out. And then we wouldn't necessarily be ready to purchase that ground in this upcoming year anyway.
Correct. And that's exactly right. I mean, some of the takeaways we took from our law enforcement discussion, Mr. Mayor, were that we got a very short window before we need to be thinking about it again. And so we've already added both of those items, the land acquisition and the police department or law enforcement services, to our ongoing list of commission consideration items, or items for consideration at the city commission meetings.
Okay. So the striping on 46, the potential opening of a sinkhole on 46, the retention basins that have been opening up, fencing those off, those could all be funded easily within the 140, and then there would still be some revenues over.
Correct.
That we would then have a later conversation about the wild spaces.
Correct.
Engineering for the city hall, those kinds of things.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. So prior to jumping into that list of projects, the commission at the last workshop asked that we have some dialogue about economic development and whether it was worthwhile to continue funding economic development. So we pulled together the proposed budget. Initially, the commission had asked us to submit a continuation budget. This is the continuation budget for economic development, I guess with one caveat. That last line item you see there, aid to private organizations of $50,000, that's an ED incentive program that the commission asked us to move forward on within the last 90 days. So I guess that 169 less 50 would have been the continuation budget for economic development. You can see that some of those line items are highlighted in green. Staff believes that those green items are the line items that could be deleted from our current continuation budget, eliminated from our current continuation budget, and the savings, associated savings would go with that. The unhighlighted items, which are salaries and benefits, IT service, communications, and utilities, that's a fair share of people's salaries, and unless we were to take people from full-time to part-time or eliminate position, same thing with IT, communication, utilities. Economic development is funded out of Little Red Schoolhouse. So that's the ED's fair share, but we'd have those costs regardless of whether they were in ED or whether we had them in planning. So those total, I believe it's 41,000 that we consider charges that we could be reduced. The 83, the 2,000, the 73, the 2,600, the 800, and the 1,000. I think total about $84,000. If you'd advance the slide on that. $78,000 in allocated expenses. $50,000 in the commercial incentive program, and eligible expenses for consideration for reduction are $41,000. Just in terms of how we got there, a city commission and a staff prior to your current commission and staff put an emphasis on economic development and created the position that was shared as our planning with our planning department. I think the emphasis on funding came right about 5 years ago. The commission that got brought in 5 years ago said we are going to prioritize economic development and began what I would call a more aggressive funding, which is our current level of funding, just a little over $100,000 a year, including labor expenses. So typical expenses that we have out of the $41,000 are development of presentation materials. You've all seen a variety of videos and slide decks and presentations, stuff that's been developed by outside consultants that we put together for our AgTech part when we make those presentations. For Canterbury, USDA, if you'll recall, we were asked to provide a supplemental information package on Newberry. We hired a used professional services consultant to help us put that type of information together. The information we put together for our legislative appropriation that we received we received it, I guess, in June or July. We got information that we were going to receive $500,000 in funding from the state legislature. All of that information packet was funded out of economic development. So we've had some victories with those types of expenses. Canterbury, the presentation we made to the county is a victory for Newberry. Without the whole concept of the AgTech part, that seemed to be what was attractive to the county commission, was that we had this AgTech part going together and we had so much supporting documentation. And then we put together a very nice slide presentation for the county commission related to Canterbury. So we've had some victories, most recently with our economic development in terms of the things we've gone after. We've also been in the finals and missed out on some really big fish. We had a development come in that we estimated would result in $1 million a year worth of economic impact to municipal government through their taxes and franchise fees and all the other takes that they had from the city that resulted in close to $1 million in annual funding. The development actually selected Newberry. Problem was that the sites that we had proposed, the property owners backed out. You'll all remember that the property owners said, yeah, we'll do this, and then when it came down to signing contracts, they wouldn't, and our proposed sites fell down. But Newberry was selected for that project as well, and that site selector went away with, we really like Newberry, we're going to bring future projects back, you guys just keep doing what you're doing. We also fund our economic development website, the annual cost associated with that website out of our economic development budget. Next slide. We also had some discussions about whether the Chamber of Commerce's, we're associated with two Chamber of Commerce's. There's first is the Greater Gainesville Chamber of Commerce, whose primary focus is economic development. They are a state-designated economic development organization. All of the ED opportunities that come through the state of Florida come through them. There's no funding to them associated with that. They're the conduit to get projects to us. I tell you that last Wednesday we got a very nice, very attractive project came through from them. We had to turn around and get it out by noon on Friday. Very quick turnaround on that. They don't have a local bias in terms of they're regional, so they're not going to promote Newberry or Alachua over a Hawthorne or Archer. I think y'all have all seen that because oftentimes we are competing with other municipalities in their region, and they're very right down the middle. We just want it in our region, and where it goes within the region, that's up to the site selectors. They receive no state and federal funding, and because of Newberry's, they initiated a regional partners concept. The city of Newberry and the city of Alachua were really instigating a lot of ED momentum, even more so than Gainesville and Alachua County, because of the focus from our elected bodies. So they instituted this regional partners concept because, like us, they're always looking for funding, and they've asked Newberry to fund them annually at $10,000 a year rate. We pitched it maybe 2 years ago during the budget process, and the commission felt like we couldn't afford it, but hoped that we might grow into it. To date, we haven't pitched it back again. It hadn't really made it off of staff's recommendation. The city of Alachua is participating in that program. The city of Alachua funds them at $20,000 a year. And they mentioned to us in a conversation that their other funding partners publicly are UF Health, City of Alachua. I believe at this date, City of Gainesville is not a funding partner with them either. So that's the Greater Gainesville Chamber. You know, that's Eric and that's Stacy. You see them in front of our board sometime. And then there's the Newberry-Jonesville Chamber of Commerce, whose primary focus is more member support. What are the things that we can do to make the business climate better for existing businesses in Newberry that don't really have an economic development focus? We are a member and have been a member for several years. We have 2 seats on their executive board, and last year they selected us as member of the year. So that kind of just a little bit of a focus on how we engage with the local Chamber of Commerce's on the economic development front. I don't know if there's another slide related to economic development. This might be a good time to have conversation, get some feedback from the commission on any of these types of things related to economic development or economic development budget.
It's a good idea. We've covered a lot there. Any questions on those slides? Commissioner Norfleet?
On the, back to what you was talking about with the city's economic, what revenue has the city brought in to the city, the city's economic department brought into the city?
Well, it's in terms of, well, I would say that the $500,000 grant that we received just recently would be a revenue stream that we hadn't seen previously. You know, we could argue that we might get it if we don't have an economic development department, but the focus from the commission to, hey, all things economic development, go do, we have done. the materials that we utilized to get the grant that we provided to the the folks in the legislature were all developed through the funding from economic development. So hard to say that we would get land projects without this focus on economic development. Or we could say that we absolutely wouldn't have got them. I mean, that's kind of a coin toss. I would say that, from staff, people ask me all the time about, where's your direction from the commission to do this and to do that, to do what you do? And we say in city business that our budget is our guiding document, that the city commission's priorities are reflected in the budget. And if issues are not budgeted, rarely do we see them as a priority. So our commission has steadfastly put economic development as a top 2 or 3 for the last few years anyway. They funded it, and so we have been extremely aggressive as staff in promoting ED and trying to make sure we got our name out there. And if our funding source goes away and our ability to do some of these things, I would say that it will take some step back. In terms of which projects came because we had each ED and which projects didn't come because we didn't have ED, that's a hard one to call. We'd have to almost have that parallel universe to be able to say for sure.
Is that a final question? Commissioner, have any, Commissioner Coleman?
What we haven't come to on unfunded projects, the Newberry Oaks retention basin fencing, is that chain link or is it field fence?
It's field fence, but it's conceptual at this point. So I think staff is going to look a little bit closer at some more economic ways to do it and make sure that they're both economic and aesthetically attractive.
Got it. Okay.
Commissioner Herzum?
Yeah, as I calculated out, that legislative appropriation for wastewater was $500,000. If we're spending $169,000, that's almost a 3-to-1 return just based on that one single item. So I don't get a 3-to-1 return on my investment in my bank, and so I'm certainly going to be supportive of the economic development budget remaining the same, because I don't know that we can actually get any better return on that investment. So with that, leave it.
Welcome, Commissioner Martin. We are page 6. We are wrapping up the staff's breakdown of economic development. To summarize, out of the $170,000 line item, 40,000 roughly would be what staff would call discretionary. And I believe that you guys have not broken down that 40,000 just yet. Well, yeah, typical submit presentation materials, appropriation, wastewater. Do you break that down further?
Absolutely.
Right here.
It's the green highlighted items.
On the screen, there's like a light green and kind of a dark green. All the green?
The ones that look like professional services, 15,000, postage, 350, advertising,
Those are the things we add those up.
10,500.
So when we add up advertising, you got 10,000 in advertising costs roughly there.
Correct.
Membership certificate and training, you've got 6,000 there.
Correct.
For those would be sending employees to conferences, getting them trained in.
Correct.
Give me an example of a training that you would send them to.
Well, the travel for when we travel to Tallahassee, we go up during the legislative session. We're probably there every third week, so that equates to 5 or 6 trips. Staff for a day. Sometimes they're overnight, depending on the nature of it. That comes out of there. There's some CRA training that's programmed into this budget. We went to a conference with Commissioner Herzum a year or 2 ago on Ag Tech of the South. Those are the types of things that get funded out of that.
And the 50,000 is a brand new program. Since we got a good audience here tonight, I'm just going to celebrate a little bit. This is another economic development program. The idea is that if you build new commercial development, you can have up to $50,000. There's benchmarks that you have to hit. but you can have up to $50,000 of the permitting fee waived for commercial development. So we had some local developers push for that program, advocate for it. We funded it. We're very excited about it. We hope that we see some fruits of that project in the very near future. Any other questions from the dais on where we are at this point? Let's take any questions from the audience on where we are at this point. Can you come on down to the podium? We're covering a lot of information. I want to make sure everybody understands what we're
Thank you. Joy
talking about.
Glanzer. We had talked about Main Street, of course, and I don't see that on here specifically. Is there a reason?
Main Street right now is currently unfunded. So, and the last, was it a budget workshop or a meeting? In the last budget workshop, we had a different entity approach the commission with a more concrete proposal, and the commission decided to take the $10,000 that we didn't have a concrete proposal for with Main Street and shift it over to that
I
entity.
think we did have a concrete proposal, but what I want to say real quick is that, I mean, I love this city and I've served it a long time, and I've never seen an organization like Main Street with 13 years of volunteers to do what they've done. I think you've enjoyed the goods and services they've given to you for 13 years for free, about 10 of those years, and now they're finally getting traction. They're finally, I mean, now we've got the farmer's market, these wonderful opportunities, and you're pulling your support from them now, and I'm not sure I understand that, and I'm not finished yet. You can-
But hang on one second, Joy, because there's going to be a time later on in the meeting
All
to
right.
have that conversation. Right now, I
Okay.
want to make sure that we understand
All right,
what
what's in
we're
there?
talking about right now,
Is
which
it
is
going
the
to be too
economic
late to
development.
change it at that point, or is it?
This is a workshop. We
Before
haven't
the
had
vote,
it. We have
okay.
another vote Monday night.
Because I do have
so
some figures and things to
Nothing
present.
is too late.
Okay.
Nothing is too late. But I want to make sure we're on track with where we are right now, which is talking about the economic development program, and make sure we all understand that piece. Hearing none? Okay, Mike, keep on going.
Mr. Mayor, if the commission's satisfied with that discussion, then we'll talk about unfunded projects and initiatives, kind of where we left off at the last meeting. So the items that we had discussed were the repair of a sinkhole on Southwest 46th Avenue, I guess formerly a sinkhole, now it just seems to be where the road is settling. And Jamie had given us an estimate of $50,000 or so. There's also a request to stripe a portion of that road at a cost of $5,000 to $10,000. Staff had brought forward a concern about 2 retention basins in Newberry Oaks, where they've seen a number of sinkholes developing, and they felt like they were a public safety concern, and recommended fencing of those 2 basins. So we proposed to fence them with field fence at a cost of, I think we're estimating $325 a foot. One of our elected officials thought that that my estimates at $5 a foot may have been a little too generous, and I had to agree with him, and so we backed it down to $350 a lineal foot for field fencing. That's a 4-foot high red top with wood post. Try to make it attractive as you could. I know the neighborhood might like something more attractive, but strand of barbed wire. So that's what we proposed for there. We also were talking about $100,000 for land acquisition for a future police station, although we didn't have a particular site in mind with that. We just thought that was probably the appropriate number to budget for. If we consider the $140,000 and the current budget at 5.999 is fully funded, including the museum enhancements that we discussed at last meeting that related to the video at the Little Red Schoolhouse, and the increase in salary for the city clerk's office. So we have a balanced budget. The $140,000 additional that we anticipate receiving through the property tax, I guess, change email that we received, amendment, would fund all but the police station land acquisition. Staff recommends that we move forward that way, but approve the budget that we approved at last Monday night's meeting, the tentative budget, and we will affirm sometime in October that we're going to see that we're actually going to realize that additional $140,000, and then come back, do an amendment to the budget, include these projects, The balance would be discretionary. We could either put it to unrestricted reserves or apply it to one of those projects that we mentioned previously as a long-term city commission thinks it's going to need to do something in the next 5 years.
Okay. Any thoughts on those projects? Those are pretty much the projects that that got into the conversation at the last meeting. And, you know, I think the only thing I want to tweak just a little bit is, I believe at the last meeting, the question was made, if it's a choice and we have to choose between these infrastructure projects and economic development, we should go with infrastructure. So I don't think it was necessarily put forth as, is economic development worthwhile? It was, if we have to make a choice here, which one would we choose? And I think in that situation, we would probably all say we have to go with the infrastructure. But now we have a fuller picture. So thoughts and questions on these projects? I mean, I think what I'm hearing is from staff is that we, wait for the property appraiser. We put these aside, put the police station on hold for a whole other year. And I think that there's enough money in reserves if land comes open that we think that is exactly where we want a police station to be and it's the best site, we can pull it out of reserves if it's perfect. Thoughts? Commissioner Norfleet.
I'm good with them and holding off on the police station land.
Head nod, head nod. So leave the budget. Guys, just so we're clear, since we've had a first reading at the budget at 599, no matter what happens here today, next Monday we'll also start at 5.99, which is exact same millage rate that we were at last year. It's a continuation budget. So nothing much has changed from this year to last year. So I'm not seeing any questions from the dais. Commissioner Coleman?
Mine's more a comment. I was one of the commissioners 5 to 6 years ago that came on board and all the stuff that was going on here with investigations and all with all this sports stuff. So not that I don't love sports, but all 5 of us, it was economic development. That's all I heard everywhere. I mean, every door to door, when are we going to bring something in here? And we're doing everything we can, and I know staff is. So I'm wholeheartedly behind keeping things like it is right now. And not that I'm not going to have my radar on this year for that even more. But I agree with Commissioner Herson, 3 to 1. I don't get that anywhere. So that's my comment.
I would say with my conversations with Representative Watson and Clemens and Senator Perry, that we're also very well positioned in Tallahassee next year. Our request has been $1.5 million, I think, for 2 years. We got $500,000 this year. We seem to be at the top of the list for the million for the sewer, running down 26. And as staff reported, the city of Newberry did everything right for that development. I don't know if that development would have come to fruition, but if a private property owner decides that they don't want to sell their land, that kind of is the end of the conversation at that point. But everywhere I go, I just have this little lapel pin, and people see that and they say, Newberry. You're from Newberry. Everywhere I go, I hear good things about Newberry. What are y'all doing down there in Newberry? And I say, we got a commission that sets a clear policy directive. They fund it. We got staff that hears that message, and they go out there and they aggressively seek it. So we didn't have very many questions from the dais. We've got a packed house here tonight, so I'm assuming you guys are all here to ask about something in particular. So let's go ahead and open it up to the public. For questions and comments from the public. Tonight was sort of the 5th budget workshop that the commission has sat through to get to this point. We've already had a budget hearing, the first reading of a budget hearing last Monday. Next Monday will be the second reading. So I'd love to think that you guys all just came out to be actively involved, but there's usually an issue that we need to discuss when you get this many people in City Hall. Now would be the time. Joey, come on down and now I cut you right off just as you were getting passionate, so I want you to get that passion. No, bring the passion back. That's good, right?
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm in uncharted territory because I'm a huge supporter of the city, and I love the city and have served it for many years, and so I'm always usually on your side. But I only recently, 4 months ago, became involved in the board with Main Street, and it just blew me away what they do, and I know they've done it for 10 of these years with no money. And I'm not sure what the museum enhancement has to do with downtown, because what they've done with the farmers market, Main Street, the art gallery and the festival, and I don't know if anybody in this room has been to the festival or the farmers market or the, gallery. Now's the time to come up and support it, because it has been a passionate work of these volunteers. They have not been paid. And I hear that what happened was we didn't go for a budget recently, or for a grant recently, and that kind of soured the commission on funding us. But what happened was about 100 hours was needed by our main volunteer, our executive director, to get us back in compliance with the Florida Main Street. That took her time away from organizing us all to do our fundraising. Since then, this has only been about 3 weeks ago, we have made great strides in our membership. We've got about $5,000 committed. We know we make $5,000 on the festival. We've got sponsorships lined up. And we were doing all this with the idea that we were going to have funding to proceed and do what we need to do. So you can imagine our shock and awe that all of a sudden, I know you commissioners have been to visit these wonderful events that we've had, and it hit for this very little bit of money. It honestly is a drop in the bucket compared to what we have. And to imagine downtown without the art gallery, without the farmers market, without the fall festival, I think it would be a sad moment. When we give, the economic development, I'm so happy to see that you funded that department. I've seen it. I served on that board 10 years ago when we struggled just to be, what are we doing? And now to see what it's come to, I'm just thrilled. And because of that, I think that this is the only organization we have that's focused on the downtown. We have a lot of other things. I know my time's up, and it's wonderful what we're doing at Canterbury and all around, but this is just another element of it. Without this group, and again, I've served with many, many boards, and I've never seen so many volunteers come week after week after week and work so hard for this wonderful organization they have. So I hope you might reconsider on some level helping it to maintain its, status and function, because, we love it, and I think I would love to see it stay. Thank you.
Since you're out of time, does someone else want to kind of pick up where she left off?
Anyway, Lisa Tate, citizen. I would just expound on that too, and it kind of was the impression that when it came down to the funding coming from the commission to Main Street, it felt a little like a this versus that, and certainly the Little Road Schoolhouse history and project there is an important project too. We understand that. I believe that rightly, though, belongs as a Main Street project and should come in through the Main Street historical piece, because that's what Main Street is about too, is also, revitalization of downtown, rebuilding and improving upon the history of Newberry. And even when I didn't hear the whole proposal, I don't know if it's somewhere where it can be looked at or reviewed, but that certainly seems like something that Main Street should be involved in. And then rather than a you versus, Main Street versus that project, it just seems like it should have been encouraged to maybe blend and go together and support each other and end up like that. Would have been.
Commissioner Coleman?
I agree. I agree 100%. But that's not the way it was presented. But in the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking, why can't they work together on this?
Did you ask that question that night? And I'm sorry,
No,
I
I
was late to that
didn't. No, I
meeting,
didn't.
so.
I did not ask the question, and I should have. But I agree with you. Y'all are really what, keeps the history here of Newberry and keeping everything up.
Well, and that's the branch that Florida Main Street's under. It's under the Historical Resources Division of the Department of, of Florida.
Right.
And I said that as soon as I heard, again, I haven't read the proposal, but when I heard about what the proposal was about, that was my comment, is why isn't that a piece of Main Street? And it should be. But anyway, it feels like, you know, that at the cost of Main Street to support a smaller portion is the decision that got made. And I just feel that's really unfortunate, and I wish it could be a different way. I wish, tried to give you guys as much information as we could. I wish we could get there.
And all due respect, Main Street, when I came on board, up to when I came on board, was being funded. Might not have been going into an account that was Main Street, but it was definitely going to an employee.
Yes, and I
So-
understand. It was before my time as well. I understand there's some unpleasant history, to put it mildly, maybe there. You know, and my response to that always is that's not what we're about. We've never been about that.
And y'all are doing a great job. You
And-
really are. So we'll just see where we go from here.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but just so, because I'm not sure if everybody here is in the room to support Main Street, or if there's another issue that other folks are waiting to talk about, but just to sort of give the backstory of how that happened, the funding that Main Street had last year was funded because 2 or 3 commissioners had certain projects that they wanted to move forward, and we could not find the time and staff time to elevate those projects into a priority status. And so we reached out to Main Street to say, can you help us with these things? And so we ended up, our contract was for 3 projects that Main Street was going to do, and Main Street was going to collect fees for those projects. And so when the other group came and made the presentation, we discussed if we had any specific projects that we were requesting Main Street to do this year, and nobody had anything specific. And so at that point, it seemed like there was a line item instead of a specific request for a project. And we had a request for a specific project in front of us. Now, we may have a disagreement on that evolution, but that's how the conversation went that night. And so we had funded $10,000 worth of projects in the previous budget. We didn't have a specific project on tap for that. We did talk about the farmers market and how much we wanted to continue funding those kinds of things. I think that there is value in merging the 2 projects together, because right now in my mind, one of the big question marks for the Little Red Schoolhouse project is the legal entity that we go through and how we actually expend those monies, because I think it's important that we don't write a check to any individual in Newberry to do a project. There has to be, accounting and transparency and some sort of committee, so that not one person is making the decisions about how we proceed. I think that sets a bad precedent. So there may be a potential for there in the future. I certainly, I don't know where the commission is going to go on this, but I want to say to all of the folks who have worked on Main Street for so many years as volunteers, there's nothing in my heart but gratitude. I know how much love that takes to give that much time to a community, and it has been amazing to watch what you guys have done. Sometimes money's tight and it can't happen, but I don't ever want you guys to ever feel like you have not been appreciated, because from this seat, and I think from the entire dais, there's nothing here but appreciation for everything that you guys have done. So let me turn it back to the commission to see where they want to go, unless we have other folks who want it. Ms. Betty, do you want to come up here
Well,
and
the last
speak?
thing I will say is I do feel it's unfortunate if the city commission, the city itself loses the Main Street. I think there's been so much put into that to bring it there, whether I stay a part of it or not, or anyone stays a part of it, whatever they want to do going forward. But I feel like it's such a step back, because there's so many things in place that, you may or may not be aware of, that you can use as resources as this momentum keeps going. And I think that's really unfortunate for the city that gets stymied here, so.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman, while Ms. Betty's making her way up here. Go ahead, Ms. Betty, come on now.
What,
Are you done with me?
One other thing is, for the last 5 years that I've been on the dais, Main Street has not been a line item. So it's surprising me all of a sudden, you know, I don't know that the perception was that we paid them to do the work, then all of a sudden it's gonna be a line item. And being, it's okay. So it blindsided me, because I thought it was, I do the work, we pay you. I do the work, or the organization does the work, and we pay them. So it blindsided me. All of a sudden now this is gonna be a line item forever and ever. But we do need to take a good hard look at it.
Well, and just to be clear, you know, we've been working under a continuation budget all year. So we just took last year's budget and we said, we're just going to move forward. We don't want to change much. We're just going to move right forward. So everything that was in last year's budget just got moved forward. And, you know, just like the striping on 46, I mean, we have a lot of things to talk about. We had 4 workshops and we're still coming up with, you know, things to talk
If
about.
I can respond to that.
Can you do it real briefly, because Ms.
I will,
Betty's waiting
I will.
for you.
Yes, I hear what you were saying, that you were blindsided of the piece. I will tell you that our reaction was exactly the same, because we were hearing last year that also going forward, that this could be continued to be something that we would do. I don't think Main Street has ever been secretive about the need for a paid executive director position. It's clearly written in the guidelines, it's written in all the state regs. It's never been a secret, and that's what we've always pushed to get the budget to move forward to support that piece, because that piece is what will make, and I wrote it in, you know, the letter that I sent last night, that piece is what will carry this forward. You have to have that face on Main Street who is out meeting your business people during the day, the same as your Chamber of Commerce, the person who is your public person who's out there. And quite honestly, part-time after hours and after 6 o'clock at night and on Saturdays and Sundays does not, you know, happen for those of us who are working.
Thank you,
So,
Ms.
Anyway,
Lisa.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Watch that tripping hazard.
Didn't have anything to drink before I came up here either. My name is Betty Lynn Brown, and I live in Gainesville, but I was born and raised in Newberry, and I know everybody in Newberry just about or kin to them. And I said privately, that young man sitting right up there, Mr. Norfleet, that I really congratulated him on winning that race, and I want to congratulate you publicly right now. But I love all you people in Newberry. Newberry is my home, and I want to see it progress. And from what I've seen, what I read in the paper about things, that you always see Jordan Marlowe in the paper, and he's doing something all the time. And it comes from you commissioners sitting back and talking to him, and Mr. New, all of you, helping him to make those decisions too. And I really do appreciate what you've done. I think this has been great this evening. And I would like to say that from what I don't know anything about the past of all the malarkey that went on about the Main Street and the city and this, that, and the other. And I don't care about that. All I care about is seeing progress. Let's get to our point. All of you know, Jordan, you've been to League of Cities, and you all know, every one of you know, that it's a feather in your cap, so to speak, to have a Main Street, each city. And I'd like to see that stay here if possible. Now, if your budget says no, I still love you, still care, still going to come back, still going to do all I do and run my mouth as much as I do. But I'd really like to see you support Main Street if you feel it in your heart. Get rid of all that malarkey about who said what. Get in your heart. Get right in your heart. And let's get back together, all of us. I'd like to see that happen. I don't like to see all this diversity and stuff that we hear about. But I think that Main Street has done a good job, basically. And the 3 projects that they've got, I support them. I stay a member. But I don't get involved in all that other stuff that goes on. I don't want to be involved. But I really appreciate you letting me come here and tell you what I think.
Thank you, ma'am. Other comments, questions from the public?
Jim Stainfield, citizen. I've been probably one of the bigger opponents of Newberry Main Street. And it's not because of the volunteers. Actually, I think the volunteers do a great job. I don't have a problem with it. problem with the volunteers, and I don't have really a problem with the organization, except for the fact that they focus on a very small section of downtown. I would like to see them cover the whole town, not just this little section of town. That's one of the biggest concerns I have with this. It focuses on just this little small downtown area, and our downtown is growing. It's now down 4127, and we need to include that and go a little further out 26, because Newberry's going to be growing out toward.
Just for clarity's sake, and we'll leave you our time. Main Street's focus goes past Hitchcock's. It goes past, there was a development area. There's a map.
Historical district that was established by the city and the Historical Society. We didn't get to choose because we agreed we would like to have 27 included in Main Street. But
Exactly.
Okay, so let me clarify what I'm hearing, because the map that I've looked at has always shown a larger area of down 46 and 47. What Main Street is saying is that they didn't get to pick their area. It was given to you by the historic
Society in the city.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
And
Now you can
hence
start.
why I've been proposing that we maybe don't call it Newberry Main Street anymore. We repurpose it and call it a new organization that covers more territory. I'd be in support of that. These volunteers are really doing a good job. If they covered a bigger area, very supportive. But focusing on a small area, not a fan.
She volunteered you. Yeah. Other public questions or comments? While you guys are rolling around about whether or not you want to have that, it has been floated that what Main Street needs and what the Newberry-Jonesville Chamber of Commerce needs is an employee and somebody that can answer phones and that kind of thing. Is it the line item budget that people get upset about, or is it the FTE? Is there a distinction there or not? Commissioner Norfleet?
I think on the Main Street organization, kind of what Commissioner Herbson said before is, not against funding Main Street, but don't want it necessarily on the budget item, but if they come to us on a specific proposal of what they're wanting to do, and we can look at it per item. Wasn't that kind of what your gist of it was, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think both Commissioner Coleman and I support that position. If you come with an item, a proposal, then we certainly get excited about considering that. Commissioner Norfleet, are you done? Because I'll keep going then. Okay. A couple of the comments I have is, and this is going to be devil's advocate position, and I will not make friends saying this. If the Little Red Schoolhouse project would fall under Main Street, what difference does it make how we fund it and who we fund it to? We've got $10,000 that we were going to allocate. We put it towards the Little Red Schoolhouse because there was defined projects. But if that would fall under Main Street, classified under Main Street, and then the $10,000 has gone to Main Street, all we're doing is deciding which pile of money or what label we put on that dollars. In the presentation Main Street gave to us on Monday, the budget proportions are supposed to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But I've never seen a breakdown of how the budget is actually created, developed, or spent based on the sources. And so, again, you told me that's how it's supposed to be done, but I've never seen how it actually occurs. And so, so that gives me a little heartburn moving forward outside of these are specific projects we'd like to have done, or we would propose to do, or the commission has put forward to do. The idea of the paid position, the FTE, I'd like to hear more discussion about that and exactly where the funding mechanism is coming from that, or for that.
Well, I guess that's the impetus of the question, because what I am hearing from Main Street is that they do not want to be funded on a project basis. They need a director, and then the director will go do things. What I'm hearing from a section of the community anyway is that we want to make sure that we know exactly where the money is going to and what we're getting in return for the money. So, there's, things like the 125-year anniversary, the art contest. I mean, there's been, a dozen times since I've been up here where we needed an organization in the community. That was a 501c3, that was a charity that had a group of volunteers to go and do something for us, and you could sort of turn to them and task them and say, hey, can you accomplish this? But I don't think that our model last year worked very well, because clearly they had one perception of what we were asking for. This body had another perception of what we were asking for. And and even still now, a year later, we have some confusion there. So if the question is we want somebody to help go after grants, and we want a specific grant writer, we want somebody to broaden Main Street's horizon, and we want a 20-hour-a-week person that's there during the work days, those kinds of things, that all sounds to me more like like at least a half a FTE than it is this hodgepodge sort of projects kind of basis. So it's a legitimate question. I'm not advocating one way or the other, and we would not have this full-blown conversation here tonight. I would say we need to task staff to figure out what does that look like. I'm not even sure if, how does that play out in Main Streets across the state? What would be our deliverables that we would want in return from that? Where would the funding come from? I mean, all of those kinds of things are, I believe, much beyond the scope of the workshop here tonight, which is the 5th workshop, and this is kind of one more curveball we're throwing at staff right here. So that's what I would say, to let them come back. And I don't know that we have to have another workshop on that. We could just put that on an agenda night. And I think Commissioner Martin had his hand up first. You want to let Commissioner Coleman go, or you had a...
No, I wouldn't. I was trying to remember what the projects even were, and not for nothing, but we're spending a lot of time, and they're spending a lot of time over 10 grand. And we've got bigger fish to fry as far as I'm concerned. I mean, again, just like Jim said, no disrespect to the people involved or anything, but I don't think it is government's responsibility to be determining these things. If Main Street, just like the other projects that we had at the time that got cut, if they are viable and they are wanted by the community will fund them. The market will bear that out. But back to my original, what were the projects that we were
The
even
TODs,
talking about before?
the tourist directional signs, we wanted to look at the murals project, the farmer's market, and then we ended up throwing the 125-year art competition at them at the last minute. And there was one that the 125-year art competition.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was. Or murals got replaced, but there was one other thing that we had been talking about.
Well, in that light, it should be made on a project basis, as far as I'm concerned. If I have to do anything, it would be on a pay-for-services basis, not just a line item. So, for all I know, that could end up being $20,000, and we could use the contingency fund that we had set aside for it. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Coleman.
Commissioner Coleman.
Well, the way I look at this is what we ought to do is we got one heck of a surplus coming, correct? If you want to call it that. And why don't we get direction from staff to sit down and with Main Street, and like Commissioner Hersom, the third, and work on getting us with the FTE, and what all is going to be involved. Perception's everything, and it still lingers. But I want these girls and guys. I sat back and watched Miss Lloyd and the rest of y'all, but her started off and really at one time pretty much was doing everything over there. And the surplus is coming over. So once staff sits down and and come back to us and rehash pretty much.
Okay, does the public have any, I think that we're not going to be able to answer this question tonight, but the commission is certainly here to listen to other comments about it, but yeah, I think that in the workshop, it is certainly appropriate to say we want staff to go do more research, talk to Main Street, talk to the commission, and then if it's warranted, bring something back for. We'll bring it back at an agenda where you can have a vote on it. So is everyone else here, were you here to support Main Street, or you got another issue you want to talk to the commission about? Come on down, sir.
Jordan, one last question. about
Yes.
that. Does it cost the city anything to be members of the Newberry-Jonesville Chamber of Commerce?
We are platinum members. We support the chamber through that membership.
Go ahead. Don't forget to introduce yourself, Mr. Tripp. And we'll turn your mic on so you get that introduction. Not yet.
Is it on now?
There you go.
All right, I got a bigger fish here to fry for Mr. Tim up there. So he's talking about it. But, you know, one of the big things we're seeing now, we've seen those tax trim notices come out, and I've seen a bunch of them, and, you know, our millage rate's staying the same, but the evaluations are going through the roof, you know, especially for these newer homes. And I know you guys don't set those evaluations or nothing like that, but one thing you do set is these water and sewer rates. And these water and sewer rates are just killing everybody. I mean, they're too high, you know. I mean, we got a cap rate on the sewer rate at 15,000 gallons at $5.65 or whatever it is. And, you know, I've heard it for years that the city of Newberry is a business. Well, it's not a business, it's a co-op. And a co-op's designed that instead of living out there in the country, I can live in town with you guys, and I can get my sewer, my electric, and my water cheaper because we're co-oping together and provide that service and living in the country. Well, that is no longer true. And, you know, we probably got guys that are making the decision to raise water and sewer, and, you know, just like the mayor, the city manager, 2 or 3 of the commissioners, they don't live on city water and sewer. I know one's moving out. So we probably only got 2 that's actually living on water, city water and sewer, that, you know, it doesn't seem like we can never pay enough. And, you know, it's like you said, we're sitting, I think, on the highest recharge area probably in the world. And our aquifer levels are as high as they've been in 30 years. And it seems like we're just gouging on this water. And, you know, you got your cap rate. When I'm saying on your cap rate, when you're using water and you use over 15,000 gallons, up to 15,000 gallons, you're paying the $5.65 or the $5.95, whichever one it is. Hardly no one is using that much water. When they go over about 7,000 gallons in their house, the rest of it's irrigation water. And so I'd suggest, you know, dropping that cap rate down to 10,000 and then increasing your tier 1 rate, you know, because what we've done, and, you know, what with you guys, it's been going on for a long time, we've encouraged everybody to lower their use of water. And by doing that, everybody's lowered the use of water, so our fixed costs keep going up because there's not enough to cover. And, you know, it sounds good in theory, but it's killing it. You know, we encourage all the people to make the yards look good and make everything look good, and they're having to turn all these water systems off. And, you know, we've got a good wet summer, but in your spring and your fall, it just seems like they're all getting hammered on these water and sewer rates. And, you know, y'all got a big budget and y'all got a lot of stuff to do, but first thing I'd do is I'd cut that budget about 20% across the board, but y'all got to figure out a way to cut these water and sewer rates. And, you know, it wasn't too long ago that we had, you know, a base rate of $35 on the sewer. Well, now if you go to the 15,000 gallons, it's $85. Then the
Mr.
water-
Tripp, do you have somebody who can take up this
But
for
now
you? 'Cause
y'all
we're
talked
a
about that
minute over.
y'all talked about the Main Street. I went out to the restroom and
Yeah.
came back for
I
at
just
least.
wanna be
But
fair to
I told
everybody.
Rocky, I said, you watch it. They're gonna cut me off when we're talking about the bigger fish that Tim
Yeah.
wants to fry up there.
Well, I bet you
But
got
you know-
somebody who can take
Well,
it
they
just like
can all
Main
pick
Street
it up.
did.
But like I said, I'd sure like for y'all to look at that thing and see.
All right.
It's crazy.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else want to pick up what, just like Main Street did, carry right on with it? Form a queue right there. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Hi, Sherry French, resident in the Countryway Town Square, and I can completely attest to everything that Mr. Northwaite's saying, to include the fact that I truly think there is something wrong. I know that they were supposed to have come through and put new meters, but I can tell you that as a resident that's lived here for 2 years, I started out the first couple months, I thought, okay, something's a little weird. They blamed it on irrigation. I paid it, went right along, trucking right along. I live in my house by myself with 2 dogs. My water bill leveled out after I complained to 2,000 gallons a month. Okay, no big deal. Started running irrigation again, 6,000. My bill now says that I'm using 24,000 gallons of water, me by myself, with 2 dogs. So unless they're having a pool party somewhere or I'm funding the pool across the street from me, there is something wrong. And every time I try to call City Hall or I try to say something to the city manager, I'm told that it's my fault, it's irrigation. There's no way. There's no way that that's happening. I have watched it do this. I feel like there's an estimation, there's something wrong. And it's not anything to do with the builder or anything that's going on with the properties. And I feel like my neighbor could probably say the same thing. But I've gone around and sought out people that I know that live in Newberry. 5 adults and 2 kids can live in a house with a swimming pool and they're using 6,000 to 8,000 gallons. How is the town square using 24,000 gallons by myself? It just doesn't make any sense. So there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. I've tried to seek it out. I've tried to do everything I could to do to try to figure it out, but there is something wrong. To include the fact that the cost of it, my bill went from averaging between $130 to $145, and I run my air pretty low, to $346. That's because of water. So there's something wrong. To include the rates, and there's something wrong with how we're handling the water in the city. And it's going to cause people, I mean, people want to move here because they don't want to live in the city because of GRU, but when they come out here and they see the water, it's going to distract them as well. We need to grow.
I agree.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Push the button.
It should be, if it's green, you're still on.
Okay, hi. I'm Skip Roberts. I'm a resident of Countryway as well. I came from GRU. I moved here for the cheaper water. Not exactly. One of the things I would like to bring to the attention is I used to be calibrated for my wastewater January, February. Hardly water my grass, and they said that's how much you actually use for your family. I'm surprised here when my wastewater charge is every single gallon of water. Do I turn my sprinklers off and let my yard turn brown? That's not an option. Do I put a well in? I mean, it just seems strange that I'm paying much more water for a smaller house in Newberry than I paid for Gainesville, and I had a much bigger house. Tried to downsize, but anyway, the water rates are higher, but I don't understand why the wastewater is not calibrated to my lowest usage in my wintertime and then maintain the rest of the year, because obviously I'm not using more water in the summertime to take more showers. I'm probably just watering my grass.
Staff, you want to?
Mr. Mayor, one is any customer that has concerns over their utility bills, you all know, but now that we're in a public meeting, we've got some folks that are here specifically for this issue, encourage them to get with us. I'm certain that every meter in Countryway Town Center has graphing capabilities. We could go out and graph Ms. French's water consumption and kind of identify where we see water being consumed.
I asked for it last week and I still
Hang on, man. We're gonna keep order in the room, though, please.
With regards to the way we do our wastewater max, that's the commission's purview. I worked in Alachua. They have no max. It's every gallon in gets charged as wastewater. I worked at GRU where they did the winter max. One of the things that we discovered is that nowadays people don't turn their irrigation systems off in the winter. It used to. That GRU did a winter max when people irrigated with a hose and a sprinkler, and so people didn't irrigate in the winter. But GRU, if you meet with any of their staff that analyze this, will tell you that that irrigation systems run year round, and that is a hole in their winter max. As you all know, our water and wastewater rates, our water rates are the cheapest in our region. The rates are the cheapest, and that we set our rates every year simply to generate enough revenues to cover our expenses. So one of the things about that's transitioned over the years, and when cities came to be, as Mr. Norfleet Mr. Tripp Norfleet says, having cooperative power to provide water and wastewater meant that it would be less expensive. And in the early stages of water and wastewater systems, that's exactly right. But some trends over the last 30 to 40 years have been that, I'm one of those residents that live outside of our urban services territory. I have a well, and arguably the water is cheaper from a well. However, I don't get the benefit. The real cost of a water system is fire protection. So, and we all realize, all of us in town realize a significant difference in our home insurance, property insurance rates. I'm sitting up at $1,500 a year for property insurance because I don't have a fire hydrant any close to my house. If you're in an urbanized area where we have fire hydrants, you see a significant rate reduction as a result of that. So modern water systems are built, the cost is associated with the fire protection, not necessarily the cost to deliver water. On the wastewater side, a similar in concept. In the day, wastewater plants, central wastewater plants treated wastewater to about the same degree that a septic tank does. And so the cost to treat wastewater was not very expensive. Nowadays, there's a concern for the environment and getting the pollutants out of the environment. So a central wastewater plant has a significantly higher level of a treatment for both carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus than a septic tank. In a septic tank, there are no moving parts. There's no air to be added. There's no energy requirements. At our wastewater plant, the cost to treat a gallon of wastewater is roughly the 3 times the cost to produce a gallon of water, because we're adding air, we're adding chemicals, trying to remove pollutants, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus so that we don't contaminate the environment. So just by way of an explanation, now that we have a little bit of an audience, happy to show the books. We have either lost money or broke even in our water and wastewater utility for the last 2 or 3 years. Prior to that, we were losing money at a pretty significant clip, and this commission decided that that was an unsustainable model and authorized a rate increase to the current rate schedule and rates that we have, and the commission has asked us to try to increase them in accordance with the price index, which we did the last 2 years. This year, we increased them about 1/3 of the price index. Price index was 2.6 something. We had a 1% increase, which equates to about a 50-cent a month increase on your total water wastewater bill. So just like I said, we have an audience, a chance to get that out there. I know you all know it because this is your 5th workshop.
Okay. I think we have someone heading up to the queue, and you'll be right behind her, ma'am. Come on down, Ms. Norfleet. Y'all got that system worked out now. Is your mic on? Is there a green light on it? Okay. Speak up again and see if it's...
Hey.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm Christiana Norfleet, and we're not here to argue the sprinkler systems or the meters, but we're just here to ask the commissioners, like the commission, to lower the water rates, because Newberry, you talk about economic development and everything, so you want it to grow, you want people to come here, you want people to like to live here. Well, when you've got extreme water rates, it's kind of, maybe be a reason why they wouldn't want to move here, or they'd want to live in Gilchrist County or Gainesville or wherever. And another thing is, you've averaged 62 water meters the last 4 years, and you've had a 3.1% increase. A little bit of an increase. But, so, we're just kind of wanting everybody to like Newberry and move here and grow, People want to come here, Newberry grows, so, if the commission could just, maybe lower the water rates a little bit, I think it'd please the whole city, Newberry. So, thank you.
I think you do a much better job of talking than Mr. Tripp does. Good job. Come on down, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Mary Gaffney, and I also live out in Country Way. We moved into our new home in November. The first 2 months we were there, of course, was during the winter. We were very pleased with our bills. Didn't really see anything under the, unusual. And I actually read them. I don't just look at what we owe. I do you look at what our usage is? And I wasn't sure what it was going to be in the new home. It's just my husband and I and 3 dogs. So all of a sudden, I started getting these outrageous, and not electric bills, but water bills. I did call the city. I thought maybe that there was a leak somewhere, although I looked at our meter and I didn't see it running, but obviously the water was going somewhere because we weren't using it. They came out and they did do a graft, and it's a pretty interesting type thing that they send. I don't know if you'd like to see what it looks like, but somehow, and it's always at 2:27 on every single date, we use over 1,000 gallons of water. 2:27, not at 2:28 in the afternoon or 2:29, 2:27.
In the
My
morning,
husband and
ma'am,
I
or
both work.
in the morning, like 2:27 in the morning or 2:27 in the afternoon?
It's on a 24-hour graph, so it'd be 27 in the morning. Okay? We are home. We do, we're sleeping. We do have a sprinkler system that has a timer and automatic. When we moved in, it was set that we actually have to manually put it on. We know this is not correct. There was no way that we used, if it went on at 2 o'clock in the morning, my husband and I both go to work, and he's up at 6 with the dogs, we would have a flooded front yard with 1,000 gallons of water from 2 in the morning till 6, and that has never occurred. There is something wrong, and I agree. I've called. I don't know how to fight this, but with the additional increases, this is only going to continue. And, I don't know how to change 227, but I can show you on the graph. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other comments? Other comments? Questions? Okay. Come on back. Come on back. We'll give you an extra 60 seconds. She didn't use up her whole 2, so there you go.
My deal isn't water meters or nothing. I know they're accurate and everything else. And these sprinkler systems do use up a lot of water. It was my contention to ask the commission just to go for lower rates. And my question for staff, one question to you guys is, what is the deal with the water irrigation meters? What is the status on that?
Mr. Mayor, we offer irrigation meters to our residents that would like them, to have them. They start, I think the fixed cost is right at $500 to get one installed. And I think we've offered in the past to finance. When we initially changed our rates, we agreed to finance them through the end of the fiscal year. And there's a trade-off because the irrigation water is more expensive than that basic water. There's a trade-off in whether it's cost-effective, but we're happy to sit down with residents based on their irrigation consumption and tell them whether we think it would be more cost-effective to have an irrigation meter. Irrigation meters, of course, you don't have to pay the wastewater side of the equation for your billing. We assume that all that water, none of that water comes back into the wastewater system.
And Mr. Mayor, what is the price per thousand on the irrigation meter?
The irrigation is tiered as well, right? So the irrigation is...
Yeah, we can look it up for you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's high 3s, low 4s.
While you're looking it up, I'm glad I don't live in Trenton, looking at that chart.
Mr. Mayor, our irrigation water, our Tier 3, is $4.32 per 1,000 gallons.
And that's not tiered at all, because the irrigation is a discretionary
untiered
usage, so that's why it's not tiered.
So my petition to the commission, is you're starting off at a $4.32, which is about 10 cents cheaper than your highest tier on your regular meter, where it starts off at $4.19. And we can run one of our big pumps for 30 days in a month, pumping 1,800 gallons a minute on one of our big pivots, and the electricity cost on that is, about $2,000. But I would ask the commission, like I said, is maybe cap that sewer rate at 10,000 gallons up your tiered system, your tiered one system at 219 up, and you're talking about, Rick, you don't want to live in Trenton, but I'd sure like to live in Williston. I'd sure like to live in the city of Ocala. I got about 50 that I'd like to live in here, a list of the 50 deals. And, you know, and like I said, y'all are in a tough deal, and that's just one thing we'd like to see, you know what I mean? And I'm not acute, you know, I'm not here to bash the staff, I'm not here to bash you guys, but, you know, I hear all this stuff, and like I said, we want the stuff to look good, so we're just asking you guys to see what it does. And one thing to remember, when y'all look at your budget on your water and sewer, you know, we're always losing money on water and sewer. Look at your depreciation schedules. I mean, because you know what I mean, and you know, all accountants, everybody knows what the depreciation schedules are. And you know, but I encourage y'all just to cut the budget as much as you can. I know we're on a new truck program. Every department's got, 5 new trucks, and we're all riding around pretty, so I think y'all can do it. Y'all smart enough to figure it out.
Mr. Trish, always good to have you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
My name's Larry Gaffney. I'm also a resident. Here lately I heard that Newberry flushed their lines. Well, all of it went to Countryway. The scale, everything. And as Tripp is our developer, it all comes back to y'all when y'all flushed your line. And that's the time that our water bill went up. Water's great, but when you flush your line, the scale and whatever y'all cleaned it with, come right down the Countryway. Didn't go nowhere else. I mean, I can get a bunch of people in here, the water, it's not this or that. I've had people look at GRU, that work at GRU and work in UF, and they live there, and they said, it's the water coming from Newberry. Let's get it fixed. I'm not here to bash y'all or anything else, but let's get the water fixed. The water is high. Yeah, Newberry, 52. You're on irrigation. Gainesville's 48. When did Newberry outdo Gainesville? Yeah. Look at High Springs, it's 38. But Newberry's 52 on irrigation. Come on, guys. Let's get it together.
Other comments? Come on down, sir.
So my name is Wesley Hall. I live in Countryway too. My yard's super green. I water it a lot. You can see it from. Who said paint? Jealousy from the back room. No, but I water a lot. I use 22,000 gallons a month. I get it. Whew, I know. When I called you guys about a meter for irrigation, I was told $1,000, over $1,000, and then your water price is double. So what's the point? What's my incentive? You want me to use less water, but you're going to penalize me either way. If I do the irrigation meter, it's $1,000. And then you're going to double my water cost. And hardly anybody's watering their yards. So when these people, like her, holy cow, how is she paying that much money? No offense, but she even just said, my yard's brown. It's not irrigation. I know, I've looked at their yard. It's brown. It's not irrigation. Go look at my yard, 22,000 gallons, freaking beautiful. Me, I get, but everybody else whose water bills are this high, holy cow, something's wrong. Me, blame me all day, but these other people, this is insane.
Thank you, sir. Come on down, sir.
Feeding, friend.
Good evening. Damon Fico, also a resident of Countryway for the past 2 years.
We're going to stop. Is there anybody here that's not from Countryway? Because I'd love to. If there's anybody here that's not from, and you're not here to talk about the water, and you're here to talk about the water, you're from Countryway? Yeah. Is there anybody here that? Okay, I'm just curious. Maybe there's a relationship there. All right, go ahead, sir. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I know a little bit about water. I'm the son of a man who owned an environmental water testing laboratory up in Madison County for about 30 years, and I worked for him for about 3 years. And you want to talk about a man that gets steaming mad when I walked in the door with a bottle of spring water. He said, son, you don't know what you're doing. The cost of that bottle of water is how many ever 1,000% higher than city water. And he said, do you know that we pay only 20 cents per thousand on city water? And that stuck with me for the last 20 years. But even if that cost is quintupled in the last 20 years for that county, it would still be much cheaper than what we're dealing with today. So from my perspective, I don't water a lot, obviously, because I'm trying to control costs in my household. But just stuff like, you know, not wanting to have a slip and slide running for my 4-year-old on the weekend, that kind of stuff just, it bothers me. So if there's anything that we can do to get with the water price, I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Other comments, other questions? Okay, I heard some specific things that that were been requested to look at the cap charge, look at the tier structure, look at what we cap it off at, look at the tier structure. Yeah, and I'm not speaking for the commission, but we've always been willing to go back and do that. I will just, as a caveat and a side note, tell you that since we adopted that tier structure, I've had more people from the lower end of the socioeconomic scale ask what we've done because they've seen their bill decrease. And that whole concept there was trying to get water costs that you need to live lower, and water costs that is more discretionary, you would follow more free market principles in selling. So that was the idea here. Clearly, we could go back and we can readdress that. We can't do that in a workshop tonight because we would have to have staff show us what the cost analysis, what the cost benefits, what's, you know, the question here has always been the same. Somebody's paying for the water system in the city of Newberry, whether that's the user or whether it's we spread it out over to the entire town and take it out of the general. It's going to get paid for somewhere. Does anybody here want to speak to the new system? I saw some head nods there. No? No? Did you want to speak to that, ma'am? Miss Peggy? Will you come? Take your time. Yep. If she starts to tumble, will somebody give her a grab? She just had the surgery.
I'm one of the people who benefit from the tier system we have because I use less than 1,000 gallons a month. I do not water my yard. If it gets brown, it gets brown. If it's green, because we've had a lot of rain, that's good, but I'm not paying that kind of money to water the grass. I like to plant plants that don't need a lot of water.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So that was kind of the concept. Now, we can always go back and look at the levels and those kinds of things, and that's kind of, I've sort of heard two things tonight. One is look at the levels, look at the cap charges, and two, I don't think my meter is right. I think I'm being charged more. I was about 2 or 3 summers ago that I delved really deep into a bunch of those complaints because they were prolific. It was right at the time we adopted this tier structure. And I couldn't find one where we could find anything wrong. The meters, you know, the same meters that you use at the gas station when you pump gas into your car, and if it says you filled it up with 16 gallons, you know, there was 16 gallons there. So it's the same kind of technology. But we can always go back to that as well and see, you know, if there's something actually wrong with the meters or the technology. Commissioner Martin?
I was actually waiting for a break to say, actually, essentially kind of what you were saying as far as when we went to the tiered structure, it was to actually stave off a more onerous initiative by the county itself. So that's part of what the motivation was to try to do this. And if you do look at the chart, our residential is the lowest. So I don't want us to be cherry picking what favors our argument, because the information is the information. I think the commission up here has worked pretty hard as far as the rates go. I don't think that we charge any more than we really have to. a lot of what the expense is, as the city manager was alluding to, is built into what actually comes down from us on a state or even a national level. And it's, I wish it was as less expensive as it used to be, but it's just the kind of the world that we're living in right now. As far as the meters go, it's always a hot topic with the meter. And what the mayor said, every time we looked at one, it was usually in favor of the resident. There's very few valves that were bad. There were very few meters that were actually bad. If I mean, on your meter at 227, it automatically speaks to me that it has something to do with the irrigation, because it's a time thing. Come on, I'll engage with you. It's fine. But they are. The staff has been charged by this commission to address those. You may not like the answer, you may like the answer, but we have given them clear direction to try to address that stuff as much as possible. Go ahead, sir.
That's fine. But my water sprinkler's off. I turn it on. Not at 2:27 in the morning. And it only runs for 5 minutes, each zone. I have 3 zones, so that's 15 minutes. I do not turn it on at 2:27 in the morning. I have an off switch. It's off. So how does it go at 2:27 in the morning when it's manually turned off? I water my yard, I manually turn it on. Now, we got a graph that says it's 227 for 1,000 gallons 2 or 3 times. And it didn't even come on until I turned it on at 6 o'clock in the morning. Not at 2:27. I turn it on, zone 1, 5 minutes. Zone 2, 5 minutes. Zone 3, 5 minutes. Shut it off, I go to work. My water bill. You talk, Newberry's residential water is fine, but look at your irrigation. It's the highest one.
It's intended to be higher, sir, so the people that are using discretionary water are actually paying for that, and the people that don't do that aren't shouldering the burden.
But at
of the
2:27
luxury
in the
of the
morning,
extra water.
who's running water on my bill at 2:27 in the morning when my meter is turned off? My irrigation has a lock on it, and it's turned off.
Okay, and maybe, but again, I'll repeat, we have charged the staff with making sure that they address those things as much as they can.
I'm not giving fault to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that at 2:27 in the morning, and we have a graph for several days, your graph that Newberry gave my wife said 2:27 in the morning every morning when my water meter is turned off, and it's only turned on when I turn it on.
Okay, I'm not sure we're
We'll be
gonna.
happy to work-
Does your neighbor
we'll be
have an
happy to work
irrigation
with you.
system?
We're happy to work with you as much as.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not here to, I mean,
I
I'm
don't
just
take it
saying
that
this-
way, trust me.
Does your neighbor have an irrigation system?
That would.
Turned off. Turned off. because
Hang on one
her
second.
water
I'm
bill went up.
losing the thread of order here. 1 second. So, Mr. Manager, did you?
I was just going to say, I mean, these types, very site-specific issues cannot be settled at City Hall in a public meeting. We're going to have our staff on the ground,
At
helping them.
2:27 in the morning.
Helping them.
We need to send somebody out there.
But everyone that we engage in, we're able to come to some conclusion, and if they'll give us an opportunity, get a name, leave some contact information with us tonight, we'll have someone in touch with them tomorrow. We'll begin to dig in and help them figure out what's going on. If they're due a credit, we will happily send them a credit check if we find that our meters are wrong and our billing is wrong.
And this is completely anecdotal, has nothing to do with your case, sir, but back when I was diving deep into these, I ran into similar situations. So I've turned my irrigation off, I'm not using it, and I went, and when I pulled the audit, you could see the spike at that time, and it said, okay, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I think it was. So I drove by at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the irrigation system was on. So not saying that that's what's happening with your case. I'm just saying that sometimes people have their timer, and it's running more than what they think. It's coming on at a different time. They're asleep. They don't know. There's all kinds of things that could happen. But I think what I have heard tonight that we can do is look at the tiered system, look at the cap, if the commission so chooses, and have a better understanding of what does that mean for us. I take Mr. Norfleet's comments. I mean, these are the numbers. These are what people are charging. But certainly lots of cities subsidize. They pull money out of their general fund so that they can keep other things, other costs down. This board has tried to go through every single service in the city and say we want the person that's getting that service to pay for that service. And that has caused some fluctuations. Yes, sir.
Rocky McKinley. I live in Countryway Town Square. This is an issue I'm not as educated on, but one of the things that I have noticed is I would love to see that cap, and if I'm wrong with this, Mr. New or anyone, please help me with this. Usually when you get over 8,000 gallons, 10,000 gallons in there, it is irrigation, and there's really no need for wastewater treatment for that. That's why I'm in favor of anything over 10,000. Let's put a cap at 10,000, because those are the citizens like me that they're, and I live next to Wes, and he waters 1/2 of my yard from his yard, and I appreciate it. And but
does he send you a bill?
He does not.
You should send him a bill. He just said public record, 1/2 of his yard. So.
Yeah. He's a good guy. He mows that half. That's why I'm in favor of the 10,000 gallon cap, is because it's just kind of, I feel like it's common knowledge that at that point it's irrigation, and that's where it's hitting me. And am I wrong with that?
Well,
again,
Mr. Mayor, specifically, you all know that the average family for potable water, both statewide and in Newberry, is somewhere in the 6,000 to 6,500 range. So Pastor McKinley is accurate that 10,000 may be irrigation water, but it's really a case-by-case point. I know the city of Newberry, back maybe before you were sitting, did away with its 15,000 gallon cap for about 2 months, and there was a little bit of a public outcry, and they put it back in place. The cap was set by a previous commission. That's where they wanted it. I'm sure the basis behind it had to do with that's the number that a consultant advised them to select, as anything above that would be irrigation. I would tell you that based on how we do our modeling, that if the number comes down to 10,000, then what that means is those costs get shifted to the base rate. And so whatever our base rate is for wastewater now, it's $6 and something per 1,000 gallons. If the 15,000 gallon cap shifts down to 10,000, that would be more gallons are exempt from billing, and then the gallons that were billed would see an increase, because again, we say that these are our costs, whatever they are, $1 million a year. This is how many gallons are being treated, and we got to divide those costs by the number of gallons that are being treated at the treatment plant, and that's how we arrive at it. So our $6 charge may go up to $6.20 per 1,000 gallons if we move that cap down. It's a math exercise for us, so we'd be happy to do it, and we can play with any threshold the commission asks us to. We can go 1,000 gallons at a time until we like the number.
Before Pastor Rocky finishes his comment, what's the budgetary impact? Is that something that you guys could bring? I mean, obviously next Monday we have the second tally. We don't have the ability to change any rates until the next budget year. So we're kind of up against it at this point. If the commission, and they have not weighed in if they want to do this, but if the commission wanted to look at this, what's the likelihood that we could get it done in a week? Because folks, if you don't know, municipalities, unlike the federal government, has to pass a balanced budget at the end of this month are some fairly apocalyptical things happen in the city of Newberry. So we are up against it, and this is our 5th budget workshop. So these are the kinds of things that we had a whole budget workshop just on this question 2 months ago. So what's the timeline look like?
Mr. Mayor, it's not really practical for us to shift gears by Monday night, but when we adopt a budget, we're really adopting that expense budget. So if the commission says, hey, in October or November, we want to look at
Shift the
a
rates.
different rate structure that would generate the same amount of revenues.
Pull it out of general fund and make up the difference.
No, sir. I'm just talking about.
I'm saying what a possible way that you could handle it if there was a deficit.
No, the way we would handle the deficit is we'd raise the base charge. Not the customer base charge, but the per kgal charge, so that we don't lose money. I'm going on the presumption that the commission wouldn't ask us to lose money. They would say, Mike, change the cap from 15,000 to 10,000, and we would do that, and we would end up with a shortfall in revenues, and then I would increase the per 1,000 gallon charge, the usage charge, until we got to break even again. And I'd say, okay, then the new wastewater rate, instead of being what it is today, say $6.30 per K-gallon, maybe $6.45 per K-gallon. But now we've lowered the cap for our irrigation customers, and we're still a balanced budget.
So that hurts folks on the lower end then?
It would.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Pastor Rock.
No, and I do apologize that this is the meeting it's being brought up in. Thanks to our subdivision, we were made aware, and so that's why I'm here. And I do understand what Mr. New is saying, and that makes sense. It does. It once again, it feels like those that are building in newer subdivisions are having to pay the price, for that. And I know some people think that we have a choice on whether or not to water our yards. I have a homeowners association that says otherwise, and so at some point I have to water my yard. And so, I would ask the commission just to take a look at that wastewater cap. That, to me, I feel like that could be an answer that might satisfy. I really don't have a problem with the rates. I might if they have to be adjusted. So I would love to see that investigated a little bit. And I'm going to do something that I'm trying to teach my friend Mr. Norfleet to do. I'm going to walk away with 10 seconds left before anything is said that shouldn't be said. So.
And I want to bring attention to something Commissioner Martin brought up, because Mr. Norfleet out there actually came to the county commission to speak on this, because this whole tiered rate system did start because the county was this close to instituting an irrigation ordinance that would have raised the cost of building a house in the county by $6,000. And I remember him talking to the county commission, talking about the rates, and Senator Perry being there and talking about the rates. And come on down, Mr. Norfleet. I see you shaking your head. We have this memory as different, but let's do it. And if you could do this one in 60, that'd be great.
Just so we know, the tier rate was in effect way before that.
Tiered rate was, yes.
Tiered rate was in way before
because of that.
And what Mike was speaking of earlier was in 2008, when the commission decided to up the water, and they upped it substantially and tied the sewer to it. And that was in actually it was late 2007. I remember telling the commission at that time, I said, you raise these rates too high. We're in a recession. They said, we're not in a recession. We're in great shape. Well, anyway.
That's a different
yeah, but anyway, the tiered rate's been there for a while.
Tiered rates have, but when you and I both went down to the county commission to both tied up to speak against that irrigation ordinance, it was going to be a $6,000 increase to the cost of building a home in Alachua County.
And my question
to
you guys, while staff's here, is the county irrigation regulation coming into effect in Newberry?
It is not, but it is always looming. So, correct?
Mr. Mayor, the county adopted the countywide irrigation ordinance countywide.
Opt-in, though?
No, sir.
So when did that happen?
It happened last October, I believe. And
that was one of the ones we tried to opt out of?
We would not, in the county's opinion, we could not opt out. In Manager's News' opinion, we could. But but they adopted it when there was another environmental, probably with the stormwater or with the wetlands ordinance, they went together as companions, they adopted both.
So has
I
it
believe
raised
they
your
become-
cost of building a house by $6,000?
And they become effective, I believe, in October.
So it hasn't become effective
It
yet?
has not become effective.
Okay, that's why it
But
hasn't
but it's
blown up
going
yet.
to be, correct?
The county, yes, in the county's opinion, it is going to be effective countywide, including municipalities, on the effective date, which I believe is October 1st.
Okay.
So on the against the advice of the Destiny minister here, I'm gonna do this last 10 seconds that I'm supposed to walk away. So all that butt kissing you've been doing, Marlo, with the county is out the window again.
We'll keep trying. All right. Any other comments? Any other comments? So we are going to look at the cap. We're going to see what that looks like, right? Commissioner Martin?
I'm glad we're all family, can have in-family squabbles and not have any hard feelings. I don't think it's going to cause a whole lot of heartburn to look at the cap. I'm in favor of looking at the cap because if I remember correctly, there weren't a whole lot of people that were butting up against it. So I don't recall off the top of my head that there'll be a huge budgetary shift, so to speak, down. But I don't have any heartburn looking at that at all.
But based on Manager News' comment, if you change the cap, you change the rate. If you change the rate, you change it for everybody. So as a low-end user, and I am a low-end user, but I will take 2 showers a day when I'm running during the summer. I mean, I have a hard time footing the bill for somebody else who's discretionary irrigating because they live in a subdevelopment.
I would say let's get the information, then we can.
Yeah, we can't do this here tonight. We can bring the information back and we can look at it. You know, that's about as good as we can do tonight. Take the suggestions that we've heard, see what it looks like. Commissioner Norfleet? Hang on one second, sir.
Yeah, you can come up.
Come on down as
You
Commissioner
know,
Norfleet's making his.
one thing I got to say is I'm not as experienced running a government as these folks up here in Mike New and Dallas. But, you know, coming from the private sector, we figure out what we can sell something for, and then we figure out what our costs have to be to meet that sale. Watching this budget go through this year, it's been pretty enlightening that we set the budget here, and then we charge all the captive residents whatever we want to meet the budget that we want to spend as a city. And, you know, the water rates, electric rates, whatever other rates we charge for the city, you know, I'd just like to see some of the expenses, you know, maybe they're pretty much under control, but when I see a guy out on the road painting white stripes on the road with a paintbrush and roller, that's not a very effective use of time or resources. And I'd just like for the city staff to be looking at that and maybe look at these caps on the water and look at the cost on the irrigation. And, you know, I don't know what it needs to be, but I do know how much it costs us to pump water. And it's a lot less than what the city charges.
Sir?
Over there said something about he doesn't want to be, you know, his rate to go up because of my irrigation. But my irrigation water, the extra 14,000 gallons I used, is subsidizing your wastewater because I'm paying for wastewater charges on water that's going in the ground. Well, I'm not on irrigated valve because you guys wanted $1,200. So I am. I'm subsidizing your water. Everybody here who waters over, you know, this. When I lived in Gainesville, my highest water usage was 8,000 gallons. Highest. I'm a family of 4. So if I'm using 22 to water, and you know, 14,000 extra to water my yard, I'm subsidizing the wastewater services. So that's pretty crazy to me. A cap of 10 would be amazing. I think it should be capped even lower than that because I can prove, you know, historical data shows that I use less than that for my family.
Mr. Mayor, the only way to know for sure is an irrigation meter. And because every family is different, and one thing about making rates is with 1,900 water and wastewater customers in town, we can't have 1,900 different wastewater, water and wastewater rate schedules. So we have to kind of pick our best. We set our tier rates, our tier levels at what we think are best in terms of that basic need water being 4,000, more discretionary between 4,000 and 8,000, and above 8,000 as being a discretionary water use. That's all within the commission's purview. If they want the tiers to change, we bring the model in. We tell you what the rate impacts are for those changes, and we can tell you for every class of citizen. We can say for the citizen that's 2,000 gallons, they're going to see an increase or decrease of that. For the family of 5,000, an increase or decrease. For the family of 10,000, an increase or decrease. Just for the commission's edification, you'll recall that after we adopted these tiered rates structures, we saw a per capita reduction of 7% in the second year, where we saw our consumers were consuming less water. They just changed their patterns and resulted in a 7% reduction. I'll also remind the commission that that is a permit requirement of ours, that we do implement conservation rate structures. I think the Water Management District permit, we circulated it after one of our workshops to the commission. It's something that the people that regulate us look very seriously and take very seriously, and it's part of our negotiations when we try to get a permit to draw water and extend it for the next 10-year cycle.
Okay. Any other citizen comments? Any other comments from the dais? Okay, so we have finished the agenda item. Does staff need anything more on the actual budget that we came here to discuss tonight? We have a head nod that we're going to put those three considerations onto a bank when we get the update from the county appraiser's office.
Correct.
We'll move forward there. Okay.
Correct. And any balance would then go to unrestricted reserves or to any project the commission directs us to when we get to that time.
Okay. All right. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Coleman. Go Panthers. Commissioner Hurst. Oh. Yeah. I thought that was the Go Panthers part.
Yeah, but y'all, we won the silver class this weekend in volleyball. I mean, we're talking about a 1A school was the only 1A school there playing 6 and 7 and 8A schools in the River City Classic in Jacksonville, and we won. We won.
There we go.
So I'm telling you, they're the real deal this year. That's all I got to say.
They have. Commissioner Hersom? Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Norfleet? Okay, I have none either.
I do have one tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the municipal building.
Oh, thank you.
The Hemp Association, Hemp Industries Association of Florida is bringing their hemp road tour to Newberry. We're one of 5 stops statewide currently. If you look at the website, we have the most people that indicate that they are going of any of those sites. That's Tallahassee, that's South Florida, that's Orlando, that's Jasper. So, and it was a little bit of an effort to get them here and to convince them that Newberry was indeed destined to be the ag hub of the southeastern United States. So I ask everyone to invite, and if you've already invited, thank you, but let's have a big turnout. Let's try to pack the room, 150, 200 people. Let's learn more about this industry that's got so much promise for our community.
It could be the anchor to the Newberry's Ag Tech Park.
2 o'clock, 2 to 5.
2 to 5. All right. You said that, and that seemed to remind me of something I'm supposed to advertise, but it's off. Citizen comments. Hearing none.